Good afternoon. My name is Steve Turner. I would like to run through this presentation today. This presentation talks about scaling a business. And the purpose of this was to catch people at the beginning of the process, so that many of the mistakes that tend to happen when it comes to specifically to employees can be avoided. However, if you are already scaling your business, which is certainly possible, you can recover the things that you may have lost unintentionally. So on that point, let's get rolling. So this is a presentation called Scaling Your Business, the Unintended Impact on Employees. And just let me just tell you this quickly. I was at a meeting one day, and it was at the Chamber of Commerce actually, and we were putting together classes to share with business leaders. And the guy running the meeting asked a question. He says, "How about scaling your business?" And almost instantly, and I say instantly, not by my wisdom, but by the revelation of Jesus, he gave me how to answer the question. And for the next 10 minutes, I went through at a high level what I'm going to go through with you today. So the fact that I even have this information came from him, and it happened in the spur of the moment. Again, the person running the meeting and the subsequent presentation that I did on this, I gave him a quick 10-minute overview. So today will be longer than 10 minutes. We'll dig into some deeper things that I talked about with him. So here we go. So we're going to talk about scaling your business, the unintended impact on employees. Let me give another point of reference. And it's this point of reference. If you want to grab onto the message, this is something to relate to, right? I can tell you things that you may not think apply to you. But let me tell you that what I'm going to, the main focus of this and what we're really attacking does apply to you. And it has to do with employee engagement. And I know that's a term that's brought up every single year and people talk about it and whatever. But you notice something? It never changes. In the United States today and for the last 34 years, to be honest, the engagement rate has been roughly 33%, give or take, year to year. But do you know that when a business starts, the engagement rate is almost 100? And I'm going to talk about why that is. But going from 100 and sliding down towards the 33% number that exists today is really a reflection of what I'm going to talk about. And when you're an employee, and this is I'll give you the bottom line, the pain point. If your employees have a low level of engagement, they're going to shift from being thriving to surviving. And their next move is going to be out. Because people leave managers, they don't leave companies. So if you want your employees to stick around so that you can build a dynamic team, so you can build a source of promotion from within, pay attention to what we're going to talk about here today. So as much as this is geared towards catching leaders at the front end so they don't make the mistakes, if you're in it, it's okay. You can recover. And that's encouraging. So let's go. So scaling your business, the unintended impact on employees. Nobody plans on this to happen. A little bit about me quickly. I was in the corporate world for 35 years, 34 in the management team of UPS. I left that in an early retirement, moved into the entrepreneurial world. We have two businesses going. One is legginggirl.com. So if you like leggings, that's where you get them. And Flow Business Solution, which is the sponsor of this event today. But throughout my entire decades in doing this business and working with people, my focus has always been on enhancing employee engagement because everybody wins, hands down. Okay. So today's focus, and I really put this presentation together in 2 days because it's quite lengthy. So we're going to go over it in 2 days. So today's focus is going to be on discussing the following: that scaling is a lifestyle, not an event. We're going to talk about the elements of scaling. We're going to talk about the progression of employees in a scaling business, which is really our focus. What's the impact on employees? I'm going to talk about an event that has concealed expenses and high opportunity costs. And we'll talk about that as well. So scaling is a lifestyle. By the way, if you have questions, jot them down. At the beginning of any business, the purpose is defined. Why are you there? You want to provide a product people want or a service people want, or both. You can do what some organizations have done. You can try to create a market and provide a product or service that satisfies the market. And that's happened. We can take Microsoft. Microsoft got started by producing software for PCs that didn't exist. They created a market. How about Apple and the iPhone? Apple created the functionality for the iPhone before it ever existed, put it out there, and people wanted it. Now, I spent my life at UPS. Have to acknowledge Federal Express, though. Federal Express created the overnight delivery business. They created a market for it and came by and filled it. So these are different ways that business can get started. But when you get started, the business owner has to define his own skills and gaps, and then has to determine how to fill the business owner's gaps. How is it going to fill that skill that's lacking? So, but unless a business owner wants to be a solopreneur forever, which they can certainly do, scaling is inevitable. The minute you move from zero or yourself to one person, you've started the process. So scaling is inevitable if you want to have a larger than yourself business. So the reality of these things need to be in the forefront of the owner's mind at the beginning. How does he address these significant events? And you're going to find out that scaling is a lifestyle, not an event. A business does not all of a sudden decide to scale. They start a scaling lifestyle and they walk it out. Okay. How about the elements of scaling? You can have the surprise explosion. The surprise explosion takes the best laid plans and they can fall short. That's a good problem. We had that in the legging business. The place went berserk. I didn't expect it. So we worked on it. But you have to adjust quickly so you don't get buried in your own success. You could also have the next growth spurt. Let's say you make a decision that you're going to expand your business. Okay, let's do it this way. Let's add this product. Let's add this service. That's a planned event. And whatever happens to you, you got to create a new business plan because you always need the yardstick. You always need something to look at to help focus your attention and determine where you are better or maybe not quite as good as you'd like to be. So you create this business plan. And here's just some basic statements on business plans. Number one, expenses increase in steps, revenue increases in a slope. So you have to remember it goes up like this, the expense side, and the revenue follows it. You want it to get ahead of it, of course, but that's the nature of those two elements. Employees or more employees are needed. And when you add more employees, you have to add managers as well. When you get to about 6 or 7 people, you need a manager to oversee what's going on. You want to adjust your marketing plan to leverage the new cost structure. If you increase your steps in your cost steps, then you got to change your marketing plan so you can absorb the new cost structure that you've just created or you plan for. So then you create a project plan to implement the business plan. So here's the business plan here, and here's the project plan. It's like the steps to get it done. You're going to create a cash flow plan every time. Cash flow is the blood life of a business. It doesn't matter how much revenue you gain if you haven't collected any money. Now, in the days now, credit cards, it's easy to get your money quickly, but there is a cost to that. But for convenience, I mean, we've done it all the time. It's always the way to go. So, increasing revenue spurns growth, of course. Decreasing expenses that cut capacity restrict growth, and this is an important piece here. You can get started and realize, hey, I got to reduce my costs a little bit here. And just be careful that if you have a growing business and you cut back on your capacity, you actually restrict your growth pace. Now you can do it for a short time, right? If you have 5 cars, you only need 4, you can put one in the garage. You can take it out when you need it. You haven't hurt your capacity. But if you sell the car, you have hurt your capacity, right? Cut waste. One thing about waste, the savings drops directly to the bottom line, not only the first time you save it, but every time thereafter. Instant profit, getting rid of wasteful spending. You may need outside funding if your internally generated funds aren't quite up to par. When you put a plan together, you want to have a logical repayment plan. Can't be pie in the sky. It's got to be reasonable, reflecting the flow of the business. The best, this is what I prefer doing. It's my perfect idea is to generate cash from the business to pay back the loan. If it's a loan, stock's a different story. But if it's a loan, I like to have the option of, well, what if I don't want to pay back the loan and just keep it to grow the business? I keep that in the back of your mind. I like that option. And here's one thing, you need to advise your employees of what you're doing. No one likes surprises, not even them, and not even you, right? Okay. The progression on employees of scaling a business. Now let's look at the way a business grows, right? It starts with 1 or 2 people with a vision. UPS had 4. 4 guys got started. Business grows beyond the owner's abilities. So now the owner has to hire somebody. And the owner and the employee work together. This is what I talk about the progression here. The owner and the employee work together. Solid business relationship develops. The employee engagement is close to 100%. Everything's rosy. Been there. In our legging business, employees who come to work, we'd have a great time, had fun, filled orders, talked about the kids, things that moms are. We had moms in the business that were coming back into the workforce after the kids grew up. Very solid work. All right, so everybody, all's good in this case, right? So let's keep and continue. The business continues to grow. More employees are hired by the owner. The owner and the employees work together. Solid business relationships continue. Employee engagement is close to 100%. All is good. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 employees. Okay. Now we get to the next phase. The business grows where a manager is identified from the group of employees to run the day-to-day business. The owner needs to step back and do the things the owner needs to do. So the business owner steps back, do the work he or she needs to do. There is less day-to-day contact between employees and the owner, but engagement is still close to 100%. But the owner and the group of employees are starting to separate as far as time spent together in a day. So now the business grows identified. The owner is probably still hiring at this point. The owner is still involved in the hiring process. He or she periodically is on the floor with the new employee. Engagement is close to 100%. All is good. Now, as I go through these progressions, you can maybe stick yourself in. Where are we in this process? All right. Let's keep going because maybe you're beyond that stage. Okay. Additional managers are added for every 6 or 7 employees. You can go by that basic ratio. 6 to 7 employees to a manager. It can vary slightly by the business, but it's pretty accurate. During the continued expansion, the hiring of employees will move to the managers. That's a key point. Owner relinquishes the hiring, the managers take over. So now the owner is more withdrawn from the day-to-day operations. The business continues to grow, but the foundation starts to crack. And here is where it starts to get critical on something nobody ever planned on. Nobody ever planned on this to happen, right? So The relationships between the employees hired by the owner and the owner starts to weaken. The bond between these employees and the owner who hired the employees for his or her vision is compromised through no intention of anybody. So just think about it a little bit. Owner and everybody's working together like this, right? Then the business starts to grow and that bond isn't there anymore. And the hiring is starting to happen by managers. I'm getting ahead of myself. Keep that in mind. Okay. Employee engagement starts to weaken here because the bond is weakening. The managers who are doing the hiring are not hiring as an owner, they're hiring as a manager. So the natural bond between an owner and the new employees is no longer created. Now there's growing pains and engagement continues to weaken. Here comes the issue. Owners do not train managers to hire employees with the same sense of family as the owner. It's the bond is the commitment's different. So the managers are not trained to be leaders as the owner is. They're existing as managers. The other shortfalls of not being trained leaders start to appear over time in the attitudes of employees, and employee engagement continues to weaken. Now, I talked about 100% down to 33. 33 is the average in the United States. You have to wonder, how does it get from 100 to 33? That's what we're talking about here today. Nobody intended for this to happen, but it does, and it is happening. The penalty is paid by everybody in the business. The owners, the managers, the employees, everybody pays the penalty because the engagement is less. And it slowly erodes. It doesn't go like this, boom. It slowly erodes and we kind of get used to it. I'm telling you today, don't get used to it. You're going to pay a penalty. All right. The level of the engagement of employees starts to fall over time and deteriorates to the current stat of 33%, which I mentioned before. This comes out of Gallup. Gallup reports this number every year, and it's basically flat for 33 years. Why? I'll tell you later. So it's 33 instead of close to 100 at the beginning. They become stagnant instead of engaged, and resignations always increase as a result of stagnation. The impacts of increasing resignations, employee experience is lost that is needed to support the growth of products and services. You cannot buy your experience, not yours. You can buy people that have had experience of something. But the true experience of your business comes from within, not from without. Okay. The unbudgeted high cost of replacing employees is drawing cash from other planned uses. Why is that the statement? Have you ever heard of a planned resignation? The closest you get to that is retirement. Everybody knows when people retire. You got months of notice. But if someone walks into your office and says, "Hi, I'm giving 2 weeks notice," that was an unplanned event. What are you going to do in 2 weeks? Not much, really. In fact, if it was me, if I had an employee that wanted to leave, I'd pay him the 2 weeks and let him go. You don't need a dissatisfied person hanging around. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. They can go out and try to find something different, right? Everybody wins. Okay. So when we have to replace an employee, we are engaging in an expense we hadn't planned on. How do you fund unplanned expenses? You got to take it from someplace else. Maybe you had the money invested for the future. You got to pull it out. Take care of this gap in the present. These are the risks of unnecessary. I call them unnecessary resignations. Now, how can I say unnecessary? Because I've been in the business world for over 4 decades. I'm going to tell you something now that you might think, oh, whatever, whatever. I can't do that. Yes, you can. I will never tell you something you can't do. My turnover rate was practically zero. Why? Because the employees enjoyed working for us. They can enjoy working for you. If you created a business environment where people enjoy being there, you're going to have a much lower retention rate, turnover rate. And you know what else? When changes are made to change this dynamic, the results are almost instant. This is where it's instant. If you have a bunch of people on your team who are stagnant and they're looking for something else, and all of a sudden you come in and you do something that gives an entirely different presentation of who you are, they're going to wait. They're going to watch and see, is our manager for real? If they think you are, if they think you're real in what you're doing, they'll probably hang around to find out what's going on. Okay. So no one planned for the deterioration to occur, but it's our responsibility as leaders to correct, better yet, prevent this occurring in the first place. Our most prevalent, and here's the problem. Okay, this is the bottom line, decades long issue. Our most prevalent management style has been replicated throughout the decades to our demise. We tend to replicate ourselves. I could go deep into that. I won't do it here, but please take it for granted. Each management person replicates themselves. So things don't change. It'll never change unless a new approach that is intentionally initiated. It will not happen by accident. Now I'm going to examine the cost of employee resignations and see why this is so critical for you and everybody else. Now, I mentioned opportunity cost. What's the definition? Opportunity cost is the lost benefit due to making an alternative choice. The lost benefit due to making an alternative choice. Why is it concealed? Why is this opportunity cost concealed? Because you cannot find the cost of resignation on your income statement as a line item. It is buried in everything else. So you don't know your resignation cost, your cost of turnover, unless you figure it out. It's not going to jump up and slap you in the face. It's not going to wake you up some morning. So it's included in other line items such as payroll and the impact of decreased productivity, decreased service levels, and decreased product knowledge. Emergency actions are required to fill a job that was not planned and being lost. I mentioned that before. Lower productivity to do the vacant job, by definition, is a higher cost. So if somebody's making 10 widgets an hour and you can only replace them with people who can do 7, it's going to cost you 30% more to do the same work simply for productivity purposes. Okay. So it's likely that the replacement activity is also paid at a premium rate overtime. We normally don't have people on the bench waiting for somebody to quit. So if you lose a person, those 8 hours, that 8 hours has to be absorbed by somebody who's already working 8 hours. So maybe it's spread out over 8 people. So everybody works an extra hour, doable, but that's all paid at overtime. So number one, you're losing on the productivity side and you're losing on the cost of your payroll. Now, apart from what I just mentioned, replacing people that are lower productivity and higher payroll costs, what does it cost to replace an employee? And as I walk through this, you're going to see how these costs are buried in your income statement. Okay. Number one, you got to write a job description. You got to place an advertisement for the open job. You got to hire an employment agency to hold initial interviews. You're then going to receive a list of recommendations and you're going to hold a round of internal interviews, maybe 1 to 3. If you have so much turnover, you have your own HR department to replace people, may not be necessary. You consolidate interviews and select the preferred candidate. Then you have to make an offer to the candidate. You can hold an acceptance interview to discuss the next steps for the person. Okay. So now, after all of that, you have a new person in the door. Do they know anything yet? No. Now you have to train them. Okay. So these next steps are logical. Day 1, you have an introduction with initial training. Day 2 and 3, and whatever, continued training. Day 4, or whatever it turns out to be, you continually review the progress with measurable KPIs, key performance indicators, to relate progress to the employee. Employees need to be able to determine on their own if they're being successful. If they don't know if they're successful or not until you come and tell them, you're losing because they can't be critical with themselves. Okay, so day 4, you do this progress and give them ways to determine how well they're doing. Days and weeks into the future, you repeat the above process as needed to reach full productivity with quality and creating value, however long that takes. And until that moment happens, when that employee is fully trained and can do the job as good as the one that left, that's all additional cost to your business. And what is the cost? Here it is. These are averages, by the way. Obviously vary with industry. But the average length of time to do the above is 7.5 months at an average cost of $34,000. So what have we just done? We've calculated the activities, time, and cost necessary to respond to losing an employee due to a resignation that we should never have experienced in the first place. We just went through all of this to replace the person we should never have lost in the first place. We lose them. Employees flee managers, they do not flee companies. All right, how about some more average information? The average turnover rate in the United States is 9.3%. 9.3%. Retirements make up about 2.3% of it. Self-improvement, that's a positive reason for someone leaving, defined as specifically as the employee has gotten to the point in your business where you can no longer contribute to what they're looking for to better themselves, and they choose to move on. I don't like losing those people, but it's okay. They're aces while you have them. You can never be afraid of developing somebody. You win way beyond what you think you might lose by someone leaving. I gave that a 1.7% number. I'm not 100% certain of the number, but I can say based on my experience, if you treat them right, very few people leave. Let me share something that Richard Branson said one day. I think this is very accurate. My experience supports what he said. So I wish I had said it, but he said it. So here we go. He said, train your people so they have the ability to go somewhere else, but treat them so they don't want to. Money isn't the only reason people work. In fact, as time goes on, money drops down the priority list. Money's a short-term motivator. That's another topic. Okay, that means 5.3% of the people are lost by the manager. You should never have lost them. A 100-member organization will spend $178,900 per year replacing the 5.3%. I can think of better places to put that money. Let's look at some more averages. A 1,000-member organization to replace the 5.3% piece, not the whole 9.3, $1.7 million a year. Why is this such a surprise when it's examined? Because it's buried in the income statement. You don't see it unless you look for it. Do you know your employee resignation replacement cost? You can't afford not to. It could be sucking life out of you. A couple other things here. Important consideration, the unemployment rate. The current unemployment rate is 4.2%. That's just over the full employment rate of 4%. Labor markets are going to be tight for the next 3 to 5 years. That's from a Korn Ferry report on labor markets. The only country with excess people, India. So lots of opportunities for Indians to go around the world. But if you live someplace other than India, you got to deal with a tight labor market. So, my opinion, the best way to deal with a tight labor market, don't lose your people. So it's going to be harder to find employees during this time. Makes it even more important to retain your employees in the first place. It's the reason we're doing this. So at the end of this first section of this presentation, here is your objective. Make your organization one where your current employees are referral points that draw new people to you to support future growth. Does that make sense? Do you think it happens? It happens. When we create positive places to work, people tell us that's how I got to UPS, to be honest with you. A friend of mine, was at UPS. I was working in a grocery store, told me one day, he says, why don't you come over here? It's a great place for college kids to work. I was 19 years old at the time. So I did. I went and applied, started the next day. Draw people to your business because you're a great place to work. It's a great magnet. So, next time we get together, next week, we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about the better way, creating an environment with actions that secure a high level of engagement. We're going to talk about training leaders instead of managers, and we'll talk about a call to action. Now, normally the call to action doesn't come till the end. I'm telling you this now. I want you to think about this seriously. I can sit here and give you all this great stuff, and I hope you got some enjoyment out of it. The things you learned, things you maybe hadn't thought of, but they are real. Happens all the time. You may find things that, hey, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. That sounds good. Great. But I haven't even given you the solutions yet. That's just talking about the issues. But here's the deal. Nothing happens unless you do something. It's the reason the 34%, the 33% engagement level has been flat for 34 years. We talk about it, we get excited about it, and then all of a sudden, we let it die because day to day interferes. So take notes on things that grab your attention and identify solutions that speak to you. And don't miss step 3. Take intentional, specific action. I'm going to go through all this stuff the next time. I'm setting you up this time. So with that, it's great talking to you. Have a wonderful day.